All right, good evening. I'm going to call the February 17th, 2026 meeting of the Kingston Finance Committee to order at 6:02 p.m. I do see that we have a member joining us remotely this evening, so we're going to begin with a roll call vote for quorum purposes. Michael Cowett, present.
Marcia Meekins present. Victoria Kelly present.
David Fuller present.
Derek.
Oh, Derek Belnitzer present.
All right, all 5 members of the Finance Committee are present. As a reminder, we haven't been in here for a meeting in a little while. Just make sure that if you are looking to speak, that you have the mic turned on. You'll know that it's on with the little green light. Otherwise, we're going to get a warning from the nice gentleman back there. The all caps reminder to make sure that's, yeah, exactly. So I want to begin by reminding anyone watching that the Finance Committee, Capital Planning Committee, and Community Preservation Committee each have a vacancy. Any residents who wish to volunteer for service on any 3 of those or other committees with vacancies, please email fincom, F-I-N-C-O-M, at kingstonma.gov. On that note, I did want to begin by introducing our newest member. Vicki is sitting to my left. She has joined us and is raising our membership to 5 out of 7. We are very glad that she has agreed to join us and gets to dive right into the fiscal 27 budget process. So thanks very much, Vicki. All right, I'm going to take a few things out of order so that we can get this done in what I hope will be the most efficient way possible. And I'm going to start by asking for brief updates from any members who sit as the FinCom's representative to other committees. Anything that you feel the committee would benefit from being made directly aware of from the other committees on which you serve. I'll begin by mentioning that I serve as one of Kingston's representatives to the School Regionalization Study Committee. We are still relatively early in that process. And I suspect it is going to be quite a while before there is a whole lot that directly bears on our business, and certainly nothing that's going to have an impact on fiscal 27. David, do you have anything from capital plan?
Yeah, so I'm on capital planning. We started, a couple weeks ago now, but we're still in our infancy. We're meeting with the different department heads and going over the capital needs. We have, we have some reoccurring stuff every year that we're always dealing with. And then we also have a more strategic 5-year plan. But stuff comes out of the blue too sometimes. But we're just hearing from all the different departments on the needs, and then we will vote at the end on what is a want versus a need as the budget brings more clarity.
David, thank you very much. Derek, and appreciate again, thanks for the suggestion for this agenda item. I think you'd had an item or two you wanted to share from committee on which you serve.
Yeah, so I serve on the Wage and Personnel Committee. Also, apologies for not being there, but this meeting lines up very closely with bedtime kids. So can't leave my husband hanging there. With regards to wage and personnel, a couple of things. One that I did want to kind of bring just as an FYI, there was an ask by the prior town administrator for an IT stipend because of some issues with the fact that we don't have IT support available to individuals as readily as we would hope. I know that a few years ago, many members of this committee remember we actually there was an adjustment to the town budget where we outsourced IT, and it seems like the cost savings might not actually be realized there. So I just wanted to kind of throw that out there that there's some the stipend was shut down, but we did have some discussions about the fact that I guess the service quality is not what we were hoping. So just wanted to throw that out there as kind of a warning if there's discussions about outsourcing again. The other thing is with the positions that the town is hoping to fill, anytime a position is above a step 3, it needs to come in front of wage and personnel, and we're seeing almost every single position come in front of wage and personnel for a vote to hire above a step 3. So just pointing that out as the fact that there's continued financial pressure on the salaries line item and that it does not appear to be getting any better. So that, I believe, is all I really have to update now. There is going to be some updates to the wage and personnel bylaws that will be presented at town meeting, but we have not yet finalized those. We should be voting on them next week or so.
Derek, thanks very much on both of those. Scott, I can, if you want, give you a minute to comment on the IT stipend, or we can fold that into the conversation with the budget later on. I'll leave that up to you.
Well, it's not an IT statement. I did not.
So we voted as the Wage and Personnel Committee to not move forward with the IT stipend, and I believe Keith Hickey actually pulled it. So it's not something that we should be seeing, but it was just kind of an indication of the fact that we did not have the necessary tech support at all hours with the current consulting company, and that was the desire behind creating an IT stipend position.
Understood. Marcia, I think, want to jump in with a question?
I have a quick question, David. I may be wrong on this, but I thought that the step schedule that Wage and Personnel adopted in the town uses was based on a salary survey that was done not long ago. Am I wrong?
So it was based on a salary survey that was done. There was actually, I believe, a grant to enable the salary survey. Unfortunately, that survey was done, I want to say even predates my time on the finance committee, so we're talking 3 to 4 years ago. So unfortunately, the drift of accurate salaries versus what is on the salary study is only increasing as time goes on. But more to the point with the fact that, so I'll just use the example of the fact that we needed to hire a nurse, and the nurse, I believe, came in at, I'm going to get this wrong, but it was above a step 3 because we were just not competitive from a salary standpoint if we did not, with what is out there in the market for the quality of the candidates that we're looking for, if we didn't go above a step 3. And just as a little bit of a background, the nurse that was being hired by the health department, I believe that position, there's been four individuals in that position as of late. There's a really high turnover. So it's a matter of having a salary that retains individuals and is competitive enough to actually attract individuals to the roles as well.
Thanks.
Derek, while we're on the topic, especially since we have a new member with us this evening, would you mind taking 60 seconds to kind of share what the role is of Wage and Personnel relative to the salary structure and how that fits into everything?
Yeah, so Wage and Personnel's role is to supplement, or is rather to work for the non-union employees within the town to make sure that their benefits and salaries and compensation are in line with the union employees. It's also to provide guidance to the Board of Selectmen on the bylaws that, or actually we adopt the bylaws that cover employment with the town. So various regulations that we have to adhere to or policies that have to be adhered to, those go through Wage and Personnel. And it's also to provide votes as recommendations to the Board of Selectmen regarding certain positions within the town. So we just had a building commissioner position that came up. That individual was actually going to be hired at a step 8 or 9, so significantly above sort of entry-level pay for that position. And just given everything going on, the board did not feel it appropriate to move forward with that. So we voted, actually we had a split vote on that, and the Board of Selectmen elected not to proceed with the hire as a result of that. But so it's an advisory vote to the Board of Selectmen.
Thanks, Derek. All right.
And everyone's more than happy to attend the meetings. They're very riveting, just like these.
Alrighty. Before we move any further, I do think I jumped over public comment. I don't see an overwhelming number of the public joining us here in room 200, but if anybody on Zoom or if Ken has anything that they want to jump in with at this time, seeing none, we'll keep rolling. So at this time, I'm going to turn things over to our finance director and to the extent he wants to jump in, the town administrator, to talk us through a overview of municipal budget data, an update on the status of free cash, and that'll lead us into setting the timeline for the rest of the process.
Hello, everyone. Kathleen Barrett, Finance Director. I just handed out a small packet. It's just an overview of municipal finance as a whole. There's a lot of unusual terminology that's used in municipalities, and I thought for the benefit of our new member, kind of do kind of a big picture and kind of give some meaning to the terms. And the first page is annual budget process in towns. This is a memo from the Division of Local Services. And for our new member, this is one of the agencies within the state that oversees all municipal finance. So they are a wonderful resource to us. There's a lot of material that's available and a lot of guidance and guidelines and bulletins. But this kind of gives an overview of what the budget process is in a town, who the players are, what the process is, the steps, and some of the important things. So it's more for you to, if you want to take a look at, it's, just a simple one page, but it kind of gives you a general overview. The second page is so there was a PowerPoint presentation at one point that kind of had to be shelved a little bit. But what we wanted to do is, for everybody, as we were undertaking the budget process, was to just kind of go over some of the terms so everyone's on the same page and has the same information. So the biggest factor in our budget is something called the tax levy. So the tax levy is the annual amount of taxes assessed upon real and personal property in the community. So that is, that amount determines, the tax rate, what people pay for their tax bills based on their values. And it's the biggest revenue source for our budget. It's also subject to what everyone refers to as Prop 2.5 or the Proposition 2.5, whereby which you cannot increase it more than 2.5% unless there's a specific vote. And it is, the levy, as it's called, or tax levy, is, it's all allocated based on the assessed value of property. And then the levy limit, which is the other factor. So this is part of the Proposition 2.5. So the levy limit has a few components of it, but it's the previous levy limit plus the 2.5%. So that's what's added on the top. And on top of that, they have what's called new growth. So new growth is something that is assessed by the assessor's office. It's based on like building permits, additions, changes, things like that. So it's to capture the value of properties that is not actually part of that, the overall value at the time, because it's kind of in flux. So if you're putting in a bathroom or something like that, they can make an estimate of what the value is in the interim until it becomes part of your overall value of your house or your property. In addition to that, we have some other terms that would be involved, and that's called, they're like exclusions or things that are voted by town meeting to go above the limit, which is through borrowings or capital, things like that. But the levy limit is pretty much the number that the town is constrained by about how much money we can raise in taxes. So that kind of impacts the whole budget process. We can't have a $100 million budget if we can only have a $60 million levy. So that number is always kind of at the forefront as we undertake this process. The next page is new growth, which is, people will hear it, there's a lot of, interesting terms. It's kind of like things that are in the process of being built, additions, changes, and that's kind of done in conjunction. The assessor's office determines it, but they work in conjunction with planning and the building department and things like that. And so that number is determined at the end of the year. As we go through the budget process, we work on an estimate, like a good faith estimate. So I have spoken with the assessor, Maureen, who we've got a pretty good estimate for FY '27. So it's very close to what we've used for FY '26. There won't be much changes. There's nothing enormous being built or in the process of right now. It's pretty level. So that's like that's a big factor. When you have new growth, if there's something substantial, they just build like $1 million building, down the street or something like that, or something really substantial that helps raise our amount that we can, for taxation purposes. So that is beneficial in the budget process because it gives you a little bit more room. We are this year constrained like we were for FY '26. So we're not expecting much, if any, changes at all. So like I said, the estimate support is the building and planning department. We are forecasting out a little bit, but it's hard because it's just based on, we think things might happen, people have talked about, things like that. So they're good faith estimates, but that's all they are, is estimates. Another unusual term that you'll hear is cherry sheet estimates. It's called cherry sheet estimates, which I always thought was very strange when I first started, and it's actually because they used to send this on red paper so people wouldn't forget it. So it was actually on a cherry colored sheet, and so that's how they came through. What it is these are estimated receipts and assessments from the state. The state provides each town with an estimate of how much state aid they will receive for the year. A lot of it, the majority of which is what's called Chapter 70, which is for education. And then there's unrestricted general government aid, which is more for the benefit of the town. There are some, very specific amounts that are smaller that are for certain purposes, but those are the two big buckets, the Chapter 70 and the unrestricted general government aid, which sometimes is referred to as UGA in strange terms. So this kind of just helps with just the terminology, kind of gives people the benefit of, so because after a while you just kind of say these things and not everybody knows what we're talking about. So I thought it'd be really helpful to let people know. So on the second page is the cherry sheet estimates of assessments. So the town is charged for our county tax, various programs like mosquito control, air pollution, councils. We have another thing that you may notice it goes up quite a bit, and it's called the RMV non-renewal surcharge. That's for people who have issues with their registration. And for some reason, it went up a lot this year. It was just something I noticed. And then you'll see things for tuition assessments for charter schools sending tuition and school choice. So the town has to pay other towns when a student from Kingston goes to another school district. On the next page is the state aid receipts. So this is just kind of 5 years, almost, 2, 3, 4, 5. So of the, just shows you the change from 2023 to what's proposed now, 2027, how state aid has changed. It has, increased considerably, but so have, unfortunately, the costs. But you can kind of see the progression. And then towards the end is local receipts, which is, again, it's another revenue source, but it's the money that the town collects, and it's not taxes. So, you could call it, but motor vehicle excise, that's one of the biggest components of what is termed local receipts. And there's, other charges like, you'll see charges for service, which looks like a really large number. That is for ambulance billing. So the fire department, when they take an ambulance call, they bill whoever they transport. There's also considerable funds from building permits. That's one of the larger things. You'll see things for penalties and interest. So anytime if your taxes are late and you pay interest and any kind of fees, that would be what's also included in there. And various departments have different fees and charges for services, which usually aren't too big. And then another component is investment income. So any of the funds that the town has in the bank earns interest, and that's part of the component as well. There's some other smaller things, like miscellaneous, and you'll notice that there's rooms tax, so anytime there's any rooms tax that gets sent to us. Meals tax is charged by the town of Kingston, but it's not a component of these local receipts. It's actually been voted to go directly to what's called the Capital Stabilization Fund, which is funds that are set aside specifically to fund capital projects. So I know that's a lot of material, and then there is an estimate into 27, which is just preliminary, and there are a lot of factors, so that may change. When we try to keep that number to be relatively conservative, because if you underestimate that, you then could have a revenue shortfall. So we always try to be conservative, and the Department of Revenue is who oversees us, and so when they look at those amounts, they also will, if there's anything that's kind of above a certain threshold, you have to explain any changes, either lower or higher, because they want to make sure that you are estimating that's reasonable. The next page is on the top, says consolidated revenue and expenses example. So this is the template that we've used in years past. I changed it a little bit to kind of put more of the same stuff together, because it gets a little confusing. And I look at this every day. So on the top are the revenues, and on the bottom are the expenditures that are estimated. So it has FY25 and FY26. So this is what we used last year, and this is what we will use going forward. And it's kind of, apples to apples. It helps with the process. But it has all the money that goes in from all the different sources, would be that cherry sheet, which is state aid, the local receipts, taxes, and then some other contributions to the general fund budget. And then any of the budgets are underneath. So that's all the expenditures, any of the expenses that are paid for with the taxes and the local receipts. And last but not least is a sample template. I caution it's a sample. I know it's all exciting to look at the conservation budget, but I don't want you guys to get ahead of yourself. But this is the template that all the departments were sent. So we are putting it in Excel to make things a little bit easier. I know munis reports can be a little challenging to look at. So, and it gives us a little bit more flexibility. So each department will be slightly different because of the needs of their department. But in overall, it'll follow this same process, the different columns, the descriptions. So it'll have the 26 budget and the year-to-date actual, and then what's proposed by each department head in the FY27 budget, and then there'll be a percentage change. So just to kind of, so you can at least know what it'll look like. So I know that's a great deal of information and a very abbreviated presentation, so if anyone has any questions or concerns or comments, whatever I can do to make things kind of.
The only question I have is going back to the state receipts.
Yep.
Is it a percentage every year? How do they base their information and income?
I mean, there's a lot of, you hear different things where the state will propose, because it goes through the governor, and then, it's through the House and the Senate. Like, so everyone, they have all different calculations. I think they had talked about, I don't know if you remember, something along the lines of about 2.5%. Some states may get more, some of the more distressed states, distressed towns get like a little bit more of like school aid, and, sometimes towns that look wealthy because of their property values sometimes don't get as much, but they don't technically have as much money. You know, it's a very challenging thing, and it's more on like, based on their receipts, how they're doing, what they can kind of allocate. If you can figure out the whole exact process and get it down, there's a job for you up in Boston. But for the most part, it is, they have a kind of a general policy that they're trying to follow, a certain percentage, but there are nuances to the actual allocation for each city and town.
Typically, or at least in theory, it's about a 6-month process, at least the public side of things. The governor's budget typically comes out around the first few weeks of January. It takes a certain period of time to get through the House, usually toward, I don't know, the end of winter, beginning of spring. The Senate tends to be a little bit quicker, because there's a lot fewer of them. And then there's this very opaque conference committee where they go into back rooms and somehow a deal comes out. And theoretically, it's meant to be done, particularly in even-numbered years such as this one. It has to be done by the end of July, ideally by the end of June for the fiscal year, because they're pretty tightly limited in what they can do after July in even-numbered years. But I think there's usually a reasonably good faith effort to get the things that have an impact on cities and towns that need to have budgets done, get through town meeting. I would say in fairly short order. I mean, if nothing else, there's towns around here. Duxbury's town meeting is in less than a month. Ours is fortunately a little bit further out than that, but it comes up quite quickly. So.
And they do tell you in January what the governor's put in the budget. And you can compare that with the prior year of your actual receipts. That's the best you got.
Other than those bigger numbers, the other stuff does not tend to move around as much unless there's other legislation with an impact, I would say in particular on the distribution of school, Chapter 70 money for schools. Absolutely. Okay. Kathleen, thank you very much. That was very helpful. I imagine both to our new member, but also for those of us who do not have to be quite as immersed in this on a day-to-day basis as I know you do. Are there any other, Marcia, Derek, David, was there anything else, just in terms of what Kathleen had to say?
I saw that Ken was here, and I wanted to ask him if he wanted to address the huge increase in tax title penalties and interest. I mean, was that responsible for your efforts trying to collect? Isn't that what you do?
Just where are you looking?
Right here. Oh, it's on Kathleen's, I'm sorry, local receipt estimates for line 3. It says excise.
That was
Ta-
last year?
Well, it says right here, I'm just trying to look at it. Line 3.
Yeah,
They
I
don't-
think that was fiscal '25.
A large portion of FY '25.
Yeah.
I mean, that's not going to repeat its, yeah.
Yeah, if
I'm
you
just
wouldn't mind, Ken.
curious. If that-
Name and address, like always.
Ken Mullally, I'm the collector and the treasurer for the town. FY '25 was a very good year to collect
Tax title.
Tax titles. We did, I think, just over $1 million. And it was just due to an investment by the town to, give us the finances, the resources to use our lawyers the way they're supposed to be used. So
Do you know-
I put several properties into foreclosure, the procedure of foreclosure, and that got probably a $750,000 response immediately.
Do you know, Ken, and you may not, because this is not really in your jurisdiction, whether the overlay reserve was reduced in FY '26 by that corresponding $700,000
I'll let
reduction?
Kathleen respond to that.
Oh,
That's
okay.
more in
All
Kathleen's
right,
world
just
than mine.
curious. That's great news.
Yeah, and that would be in the assessors.
That's really in the assessor's Barry work, thank you. Oh, and I have a question for Kathleen. This budget format, so this is what the Finance Committee is going to review from each department?
Yes.
Something similar to this?
Yes.
Okay. And the enter comments, again, I was hoping we could get into more of a hybrid budget template for us to review, the Finance Committee, that would focus on the results of their requests for expenditures versus the specific line items. I'm not a budget expert, but I just feel like that would help in transparency and accountability. And I feel like maybe the big picture gets buried. The big picture is the top items, and all this other stuff, it looks, takes up a lot of space, but I feel like we might be micromanaging the departments more than we need to. Again, that's just sort of, I was hoping for that, to sort of get a little bit away from this. Based upon the other town budgets that I've reviewed, I didn't know if there'd been any discussion. It's probably too late to do it this year. I
Yes.
would agree.
Yes.
But maybe you could ask each department to include in the comment section. I mean,
I guess I'm not really following you. You want to know, like,
I want to know
what their activity's been for the year?
What
or-
were the results of the investment that we made in the department? Was it, did they increase their level of services? Did more people come to the senior center? Did more people participate? I mean, I'm kind of trying to see the results of the town's expenditures, which are reflected in our operating budget, as well as what the actual numbers are.
I mean, I do want to jump in and say, I do think it's within our purview, being realistic, to speak with particularly the larger departments. I think given the challenges that this fiscal year and this budget process are going to present, I think you're absolutely right that we want to avoid getting lost in the weeds, particularly with some of the smaller budgets. And for Vicky's benefit, we have some budgets that are north of $10 or $15 million for schools. We have budgets that have come in certain years under $1,000. And it just, the process by which we run requires that we have up or down votes on those. I do think that I think we're going to have to strike a pretty careful balance, right? Because we're not really a policy-making entity. I think the results go with that, but we're not the Board of Selectmen, and I think I think it would make sense to go kind of department to department. I think we'll get into that when we look at the schedule about which ones the five of us want to focus on in particular as fits our kind of interest. But I don't know that we're going to have the ability through this cycle to do a kind of deep dive into the year-over-year operations of every department.
And as I said, it's too late to do it this fiscal year. I am just sort of throwing it out, but I want to hear that. Again, maybe it's just me, and if I have to ask each one of you who's assigned to each department to find that information out for me, I guess I will. I would think you'd all be curious about
Well,
that. But I'm not.
If I may, you could, it's on, you could, I'm kind of understanding what you're asking for. So like, to me, when I go to each individual department, when I meet with them, like, one of my questions in the past year was, what did you do this year to save the town money
Oh, me too.
in your budget?
But I think that
Right?
we should tell
So-
them we want to hear that.
So, I don't know if it's too late for this year, or if we can put this in this comment section on the cherry sheet, or we just come up with a template, and we can do it when we each meet with the department heads, or you can do it when they meet with us in a whole, and you have your 3 questions that you ask every department head.
And I'm raising it with the finance committee. I know we're not policymakers. I totally understand that. Because in the role that the function that we do discharge, I think it's important, because the committee changes, new people come on. I've only been on the committee a year, and I desperately tried to find what were our procedures, what did we do, what do you ask? I tagged along with Carl Pike, but I'm sure each and every member of this committee operates in a different way. And as the committee changes and new members come on, I guess I'm asking the committee to just institutionalize some of the things that we find are helpful in discharging the duties and functions to be the eyes and ears of the citizens. That's all I'm asking for us to do. If it's too late to do it this year, I
No, I think you
completely
can
agree.
if you want to.
I will, but I think.
But for a future meeting, put it on the agenda. Marcia, come up with, like, whatever your things are.
Whatever the language is.
Like, whatever the language is for your, how many questions you have? 2 questions, 3 questions, 4 questions? What are your top 3 things we should ask each department head? Either when we meet with them on one-on-one, or when we do it in open session later on.
And I welcome all of you to write down
And
what
we
do
we
you
can
write
have
down?
that, and we can have that as a, on our next agenda to discuss whatever ones you come up with,
And
because
what
you're
is-
spearheading it,
Okay.
right? And then I can think about it the day before of what I'm gonna come up with, and maybe throw in as a question or whatnot. So I think it can be done.
All I'm
I
asking
think
is
it
that
can
it
be
I'm no longer the newest member, Victoria, but as the next to the newest member, I think it would be really helpful, especially as we try to recruit 3 more members, 2 more members, 2 more.
And we should have it public and out there, so the department heads don't feel blindsided when they come to us and are like, "Ugh, how am I gonna answer these 3 questions?" Like, they should know ahead of time. what
That's
we're gonna be
exactly why I
asking.
raised it.
Yep, good.
If I can add to that, I think you'll find that when your department heads come in here and meet with you, most of them are going to be very eager to talk about their departments, discuss the highlights of the departments, and discuss some of the benefits and the services that they have provided. They're all very, proud of what they do, and they will, any question that you have like that, they're going to be more than happy to bring you whatever information that you want. And I think it's just a matter, like you said, I've had the discussion with them at department head meetings that at any opportunity that they have to get out in front of an audience of the public and explain exactly what it is and what it is that they're providing the community, they should do it, and they all look forward to doing it. So I think it's a great idea, to be quite honest with you.
Thanks.
One more comment, and then we can push on. The only other thing, and we've been talking about it for a couple of years, so on the sample template, any departments that actually generate revenue, can we have that in the comment section and what that revenue is, or projection?
Yeah.
Right, because I find that very helpful.
I completely concur with you, Dave.
If I could add one other thing on that, I think it would be helpful to have list of FTEs and to the extent that has changed within the past year.
Yeah, and Carl always, he was his number 1 question out the gate, which was, how many full-time, how many part-time, any additions, subtractions? And you can kind of tell just by looking at the numbers, right?
But I want them to tell me.
But if we're gonna try to streamline this, the more information you can put on the thing, so we don't even have to ask.
But maybe that's why we don't have all this, like I know we're looking at the conservation as the sample, and it looks like their total expenses are $8,000. Why can't they just say total office expenses, $8,000?
Well, we can't
Say
consolidate
footnote
all
2.
the accounts and change everything, because you
Yeah.
lose all the history.
Yeah.
Those are the those accounts are
I mean,
are
you
set up a certain way.
can't, I'm not asking you to,
But-
but we don't need that kind of detail, do we?
Well, I think it's
Okay.
I
easier
mean-
just to print the spreadsheet.
Decisions, you're gonna need detail.
Yeah, so this is gonna be the template where everything will be entered into
Yeah.
Munis. This is gonna be, like a match for that. This is, when it's final, then it all gets entered. So this is, it serves a purpose why there's, account numbers and names.
But I mean,
We can definitely provide you the
Yeah.
revenue information.
Yeah,
I mean,
the-
we ask these questions
It may-
every year.
yeah.
How many employees full-time, how many
Yeah.
part-time, how many union, how many non-union, any changes? And then, is there any revenue by this department? If that could be thrown in a comment section,
Yeah, I think as we kind of
then we don't have to ask it.
segue into the timeline calendar workflow section, I think if we want to do a little of that, that's something that I can put together. I do think it's going to be important that we give people a kind of heads up about what to expect, particularly so that we
Yeah.
can do this in as efficient a way as possible, given that, to be blunt, we are not quite at the same place as we were last year for a number of different reasons. And I think we want to be mindful of that so that we're focused on the things that are the biggest ticket. Anything else on that for right now?
I have a question, just because I don't know. So do we present the departments with packet, fill this out and give it back to us to review? How do-
We hadn't historically. I mean, I think, yeah, so that's a good opportunity to segue into this. Typically, what we've done, particularly with departments with larger budgets, is that one or two of us, we'll talk through this in a few minutes, we'll arrange to meet with the folks, the head of that department, that agency, in advance and talk through some of this stuff. I think what Marcia, very understandably, is looking for us to do is to do that a little less off the cuff and in a little bit more of a standardized and consistent fashion so that we can collect it and distribute it. I do want to make sure that however we do that, obviously complies with open meeting laws, make sure that these become public records in the way that is appropriate. We need to be careful that those are kind of one-way conversations when folks are reporting back, either before or at the meeting, until we get back into public session. But I think that's something that folks in my 5 or 6 years on the committee, I've seen folks do in different ways. And it'll be a little bit fluid, I think, at the beginning for this year.
And also, Victoria, you should probably get a copy of this.
I
Didn't
gave-
you
I
hand
gave
her-
her one.
You kind of see how we broke down the workload. And sometimes the departments came back again and again. I mean, that happens. So, and then, according to how it worked last year, once all the budgets are reviewed, I think then the board of, the select board then votes on the final budget, and that becomes what goes to the annual town meeting.
Well, we have a role to play. There's a shared responsibility in
I
there
know,
that
but-
got a little blurry last year, but at any rate. Okay, so tonight's the 17th. Town meeting is, not to scare people, but in about 10 weeks. Do we have the date by which we need the Board of Selectmen to sign off on everything and we need this kind of i's dotted and t's crossed? This is we look at meeting dates that we had already set.
So right now, we have scheduled April 7th for the Board of Selectmen to vote on the warrant articles. Post the warrant on April 21st. The town meeting warrant will actually close March 24th.
Okay.
So I would say,
Oh, your microphone needs to be.
I'm sorry, I would say it'd be nice to have your work completed by April 7th.
By April 7th.
Correct.
Okay.
Well, the warrant closes.
March 24th.
So it's got to be, everything's got to be done before then, because you have to go, it's got to
No,
all be.
you'd have a placeholder for, we'll have your budget, but you don't
Yeah,
have to have it
well, they'll-
voted.
Yeah.
It'll be a placeholder, right?
Just, we just want to make sure there's enough time to properly review it, and, it's got to go through legal and the process. We just,
That's the one, the budget part that we're worried
It kind
about.
of is what it is at this point.
Okay. With that in mind, if we are targeting the 7th of April, that, if I'm doing the mental math correctly, I think is 6 weeks from now. Either 6, maybe a little bit longer. I believe that Rhonda had scheduled for us meetings on the 3rd, 17th, and 31st. Is that correct? Okay. I think bluntly, we're definitely not doing this in 3 nights. I guess my first question, it seems to me, would be to establish a calendar. The first thing, I don't think it's going to be realistic to turn a whole lot around in the next week. Are people available on any other night the week of the 3rd? I have a conflict that I can move if I absolutely have to, but I figured I'd at least ask while we were having the conversation. The Thursday night in particular, I know was mentioned as a night when rooms are often free. I want to try and, for Scott's sake and everybody else, to avoid the overlap with the Board of Selectmen meeting as much as we can.
Yeah, my only conflicts are on Wednesday, and
Your-
that's just every other Wednesday.
Conflicts are on Wednesday. Okay.
No conflicts here.
All right. Is the
Thursday, okay.
Is okay?
Yeah.
All right. So can we move that one to March 5th?
3-3.
The 3rd, yeah, to March 5th. Yep. Okay. Okay. And then after that, I think we probably want, as best we can, to insert a couple of other meetings. I think we're going to have to do this every week, realistically, given what's in front of us. The 17th is fine by me. What about the week in between? So that week of the 9th through the 12th? Is there, I know the 10th is the Board of Selectmen meeting. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay.
The Capitol meets on the 11th.
Do we want to shoot for the 12th then? Do another Thursday? Anybody?
Good.
Flagging for anybody? Okay. So then we'll keep the 17th. What about the 26th of March? Thursday. Okay. Derek, are any of these flagging is a problem for you?
No, they should all be. I should all be able to make them all work. So yeah.
Okay. All right. I know it's not ideal. Would people be okay starting the 26th, pushing this back to 6:30? I'm going to try and follow my predecessor's chairman's rule of keeping these pretty tightly to 2 hours whenever possible. But at that point in March, 6:30 would be a big help to me if we can.
So Thursday, 6:30?
Starting on the 26th, yeah. And then the 31st, I would think we could leave, if we can push it to 6:30, great, but otherwise, I think the 31st is fine by me. Okay, so just so we're all clear here, I have the 5th, the 12th, and the 17th at 6 PM, and the 26th and the 31st at 6:30 PM. Does that work for everybody?
You're in the book.
Love it.
Yes. That works
Yep.
for me, Michael.
Wonderful. Okay, I think the next thing we want to do, Derek, I apologize that I don't have a copy of this that I can easily get to you. If you've got your binder floating around from last year, it's Carl's draft review schedule.
Okay.
I guess what I am asking at this point is that if there are, because we don't have, do we have, I hate to ask this, but do we have a timeline by which we would expect a budget book or something like it to be made available to us?
I'm still waiting for some budgets from departments.
Okay. Do you have a copy of? can I
And I'll
pass-
have to include all of the requests from tonight. It'll take a little while.
Yep. Can I just pass that down? My recollection is that Carl typically scheduled this so that we were working through the relatively more straightforward ones first. Do you see anything on the first two meetings from that schedule that you would be concerned about being able to get taken care of at our next meeting on the 5th?
Water and wastewater.
Okay.
Water and wastewater are a little more involved. Facilities will be involved. But that's it.
All right, and then what about the one that was under meeting number 3? Are there any of those that give rise to concerns about things
No.
getting finalized?
The
Okay.
only thing that's a little bit different is the veteran services, because there's an agreement with Duxbury.
Duxbury.
So there's a change, but it's not impactful. It won't require a great deal of effort.
Okay, I think in the interest of time tonight, I'm going to suggest that we try and work our way through, and it's going to be a considerable amount, but to work our way through the bulk of what's listed in this sheet for the first 3 meetings from last year in that meeting on the 5th, so that we can hopefully kind of zoom in later on in the process on things that need a little bit more time to finish up. Is there anything, and Vicki, I would kind of invite you in particular to look at anything labeled for, realistically for Deb, who cycled off the committee. Is there anything that anybody sees that they'd really like to run point on, something you interested or have experience? For Derek, for your benefit, most of these are fairly straightforward, but I'm going to rattle them off for you real quick.
Yeah, I have the one from 24 that I'm looking at, and
All right, I don't imagine it would have changed a whole lot. Is there anything that you wanted? Are you okay with kind of running point on the facilities and those that you did last year, it looks like?
yeah, that's fine.
Okay. So I had you listed as a secondary with Council on Aging and with Rec Department.
Before I commit to reviewing any of these budgets, I need to know what are the marching orders? Is it like bring in a budget that's no more than 2.5%, bring in a budget that's level service, bring in a budget that,
Well, at this time, we have requested a level service budget from all departments.
okay, so
And until we get a better handle, and it won't be much longer, then we'll take it from there if we have to ask
So we
for
could-
further reductions, but a level service
so it
is
could be
what we're
way
looking
more
at.
than 2.5%.
Excuse me?
It could be way more than 2.5%.
Depending on contractual obligations, it could be.
So I don't really want to divvy up these yet. This is the first I've heard that that's the marching orders. I thought that in light of the fiscal straits that we were in last year, and it doesn't seem like, things have changed substantially, that the goal was to avoid an override vote. And I think to know that I'm going to be looking at a level service budget from all the departments, says that they may be coming,
You may see some departments more than once, yes.
it sounds like we'll maybe seeing all the departments more than once. And so again, I'm not prepared tonight to commit
Okay.
to any of this.
Okay. David, are you good to look at the ones that that are listed with your name from last year? I think we're gonna probably wait on wastewater and water department.
What about police and fire and
I think realistically, those are.
liability insurance and?
So I think realistically, we're going to take these in roughly the same order and try and consolidate the smaller items toward the beginning in hopes that even if there is something of an impact, right, a 0.5% here, 1% here for these budgets shouldn't have the same impact on the bottom line that some of those concerns do for things like public safety or education.
Well, then why don't we just do what we did last year, and there were departments that were assigned to all of us, so it becomes a group
When it says
responsibility.
all, it essentially means none, because most of those departments, like, for instance, the Agricultural Commission's budget is one line item. Right? All I'm trying to do is give people an opportunity to ask for responsibilities or suggest any changes that fit with changes to roles on the committee. If there's nothing that jumps out to you, then I'm happy to leave that alone.
So basically, you're asking, like, I would definitely be interested in some items here to assist with. as
Yeah,
far
and
as
I
meeting.
think historically, I mean, we're limited by the fact that there's 5 of us and the timing, but historically, certainly when I joined the committee, it was a year or two before I was kind of sent in on my own, flying blind. So I think for you, it would be more along the lines of joining one of the other 4 of us who's been through this at least once, to just, again, to get a feel for the process, to ask anything that with your additional perspective jumps out to you,
Okay.
so that we've got a sense before we're back here in a couple weeks.
Okay.
Okay. If nothing else, I am happy to kind of leave this as is. I will plan and I will reach out to, is that kind of how you'd prefer, just to let folks know that we're hoping to look at the budgets for most of those first 3 and then,
I think to be fair to the department heads, to give them enough time to properly schedule, to meet the days they want to, so they can, schedule accordingly. I think it's fair to them to know that, that someone's going to be, reaching out to them, and also that they're going to, their budget's going to be presented on a certain date. That's how we did it last year, and
yeah, my
You know,
hope would
to-
be to send that information out tomorrow. It's certainly for anybody that we're intending to look at on the 5th.
Okay, yeah, just, to be fair, because
Yeah,
if they need to
absolutely.
compile information, or they're gonna be
Yep.
asked additional stuff, we wanna,
Absolutely.
My
make
hope-
sure we don't have any questions are gonna be asked, so I guess they'll be asked when they come to the meeting?
Well, if their budget is done and it's ready, I don't know why it can't be made available to the finance committee.
I can send you a majority of these, there's only
Oh, that
about,
would be great.
Yeah.
which
don't
you
know.
can review,
Then, they should be given notice that that's the night. And if they don't want to, answer our questions, cold, get us the budgets in advance.
the budgets have been submitted, there's only about 5 or 6 that are not been received.
Okay, well, if
So I
all of
can't
the
put a
budgets-
total together to
Right.
tell you where we're at without all of the numbers, so
Well, maybe you
that's,
could,
so I'm happy to distribute the majority of the budgets, and you can look at that. The impact of what the overall levy is going to be,
Yeah,
based
that's-
on that, I can't tell
That's
you.
what we-
that's what it would be.
So you can't make a decision on whether or not that's an appropriate amount in a budget, because you don't have anything to measure it against. I hope to
I would
have that
agree.
by the end of the week.
Okay. Do you have anything that you want to?
No, we can't accomplish this by the 5th without a book well ahead of time,
I agree.
to
I
then
also-
reach out well ahead of time.
I agree with that, but I also think we have to start somewhere, and I do not want to sit here for 13 hours with a parade of department heads
Yeah.
late in March. That's my fear. This is already going to be condensed compared to the process that folks are used to, and if we are intending to have the kind of back and forth and the discussion that we have, I want to make sure that there's time for that.
Again, I understand, and I don't want to treat the department heads with anything but the utmost respect. I appreciate what they do, they're professionals. I heard what Derek said about, maybe many of them are underpaid or undercompensated for what they do. But I believe that my duty as a member of the Finance Committee is, as I said, to treat them with respect that they are due. But my duty is really to the citizens, to the citizens of Kingston, to the taxpayers, to be certain that, you know, they're getting the best and the biggest bang for the buck they can, especially if I'm careening towards asking those taxpayers to agree to a permanent increase as a result of a 2.5 override. I am going to be extremely vigilant. So the sooner I get the information, I will be able to discharge my due diligence, my responsibilities, just as I believe the department heads are doing and will continue to do regardless of, you know, whether their budget is approved or not.
Understood. Yeah, I think we're all in agreement on that. Okay. The exact dates for this is probably the last and big thing for tonight. I think the other thing that I would like to talk through is just, we're going to have these kind of smaller bore questions for each of the different departments. But as things come up, I know there's been some discussion, particularly over the past year, about lines of communication. And I think particularly as we are trying to assimilate and condense a tremendous amount of information under very challenging circumstances. For items that are related to kind of general overall topics for the committee, particularly when we have Tuesday meetings, and knowing what the schedule is for employees of the town, to the extent that we can get the best information that is available by the end of the day on Thursday, my intention would be to circulate that to the committee either Thursday night or Friday morning, and solicit any questions that they can be consolidated into a single request back to the town, and to have that information made available to me from the other committee members by Sunday evening, so that I can have it available to folks in this building first thing Monday morning, and there can be dialogue that goes from there. But I think as a first step, just so that we're not duplicating and overworking people's already busy calendars, that would be my preference for how we handle things, as long as that seems reasonable to the town administrator and the finance director. Is the committee comfortable with?
I'm not comfortable with that. I just think that, you know, I don't think that any member of the committee abuses their opportunity to consult with a department head. I think as long as our inquiries are related to our responsibilities on the board, I just think it's up to the committee as a whole to vote as a policy, but I don't support that policy. I think it really, it does not promote the kind of working relationship that I would like to have with the department heads. So.
I mean, I think there's going to be, by necessity, given the way that we've talked about doing this, there's going to be somewhat different, there's going to be some differences in terms of how we engage with the departments for which we agree to the more granular level of responsibility for review in advance. What I'm getting at mainly are more general, bigger picture questions related to the budget as a whole and the bigger picture, which I'd like to make sure that there's, again, that there's not kind of these separate understandings or miscommunications that occur, again, particularly in light of the challenges we face on the timeline.
That's why I asked for, you know, that's why I made the comments I did about the budget format and all of that. I think we really need to institutionalize these things rather than having them be personality-driven or circumstance-driven, that there should just be a procedure. If that's going to be a binding procedure that the committee's going to be binding on all future chairs to do that, then, you know.
I mean, I'm not sure I have the power to bind much
I
of
don't
us in
think
the
you do.
future, but
I don't think you do, but if that's what you want to
and I'm
do as the chairman, you're free.
not looking to do that, but I am asking that we do that, we do that with the bigger picture questions. Derek, Vicky, Dave, any?
I mean, I tend to agree with you, Mike, on that. I would imagine, I'm just thinking of a couple of them, like In my mind, our police chief and our fire chief don't need to be harassed with 4 emails from all of us asking, how many calls did you have? How many times do we have requests for mutual aid from neighboring towns because of staffing shortages? I think a single point for those questions is probably more reasonable and more respectful to their time.
Yeah.
Does policy apply to like Scott and Kathleen, the town administrator? I'm not allowed to
can
call
reach out to me
Scott.
whenever
May I
you-
call you Scott? Does it apply to us reaching out to the finance director?
I think the finance director has made abundantly clear that she would prefer to communicate either with the chair and/or the committee as a whole, and I'd like to respect that.
And again, I think it's something that is personality driven as opposed to, should be policy driven. I think the finance director should be available to meet with members of the finance committee if they ask. Unless there is an objection that we're asking personal questions, that, we're not demanding that it be immediate. So again, I want policy that matters addressed, and I want them to be based on good policy, not personalities, and that's what I think this is. I agree with Derek. No member of this committee, I think, in the past has ever harassed the finance director. The reason this policy is being requested, let's be honest, is that it's the finance director's request, and I object to that.
Okay. That is not the sole reason, but I think at this point, it'd be best for us to move on. Do any members of the committee have any other questions before we get to a couple of final smaller things of the evening?
Again, just for future reference, I don't know, this is not directed to Scott, it would have to be directed to Kathleen. Is this 5-year forecast that was presented to the select board, the school committees, and the finance committees in September, is this something that is still valid and we should consider?
It was never presented, and no, it's outdated now.
So, okay.
Are
So
you
do-
talking about the kind of big, everybody at the table
The
meeting?
big 5-year forecast, remember that big meeting?
Yep.
So that's just totally, do we have a 5-year forecast, or do we have plans to do a 5-year forecast to replace this one? No,
Yeah, it's something that we're going to be working on, but giving the incredibly tight turnaround because of the late start with these meetings, it's not something that can be done at the same time as putting all the budgets together.
Oh, I'm not saying
I'm going to
that.
update it with the more recent information and make it more relevant, but it's something that's going to have to go along with the process, because some of the assumptions have changed.
no, I'm
and
just
some of the other
assuming that
issues.
it's something that you and Scott have consulted about, and that's going to be not after, something after annual town meeting that would be on your radar screens.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah. It probably just, given the incredibly abbreviated time frame for this, it's not going to be something that can be done along with the budget.
Oh, no,
I mean,
I'm not-
there'll be things that I'll update, but I'm
I'm
not
not
going to
asking that.
distribute it or
I'm just
present it.
asking, is that still valid? You answered that, so my question was, is there going to be something to replace that? And you've answered that, thanks.
Okay. The only other thing I wanted to mention, Rhonda, I think it's been a little while since we took a look at any minutes. Let's, I think, for the sake of clarity and communication with the public, if we could get those circulated in advance of the March 5th meeting. Obviously, folks are going to be able to abstain as necessary, but if we can work on that backlog whenever you get the opportunity. Again, I know there's quite a number of demands on your and everyone else's time right now. All right, so at this point, I will plan to circulate a schedule and make contact with the relevant folks in the town for the meeting on March 5th, and ensure that the relevant member of FinCom is CC'd on that so that they can begin that process. And I will obviously forward any information that I'm given, whether specific or general, as quickly as I can. We now have our next meeting not on the 3rd, but on the 5th of March, 2026, at 6 PM. I imagine in here, but that will be set, if necessary, closer to the time. Otherwise, Derek, Vicky, Marcia, Dave, anything, Scott or Kathleen, anything that you'd like added for the evening? All right, in that,
Update on free cash?
update on free cash. That is a good call. Kathleen, do we have a update on that?
It has been postponed because of this process.
Okay.
Because of tonight's meeting? I'm sorry, you said this process?
I think your mic might have, yeah, there you go.
I'm confused.
The budget as a whole, and there was an issue with the reconciliation with the school, so we had to redo, so we had to do a full reconciliation with the school budget.
We had to redo our Schedule A?
No, Schedule A is, so just for clarification for purposes, Schedule A is a reporting document that is submitted to the Department of Revenue, which they use for, if you've ever been on their website, their dashboard has all the different reports you can run, and they compare, cities and towns and categories. So the Schedule A is strictly reporting. So a balance sheet and the supporting documentation is the documents that are submitted to the state so that we can get our free cash certified. In order to have that complete, you have to have all your books reconciled and then the report completed and submitted and reviewed. So because of some issues that have come up with the school specifically, that had to be, it's taken longer. I think we've resolved the issue this afternoon, but there were some questions. They have a different software than we do, so everything is imported into our records, and then you have to generate reports and send it back to them to make sure it matches. And because of staffing issues on the school side as well, it was delayed, and so in going through, there was a couple of things that needed to be resolved and corrected, and this afternoon, we were able to do that. I met with them for hours at length and got that taken care of.
Just for the committee's clarity, there has been some transition, particularly in the financial wing of the school department in recent, and not for the first time, so for a little color there. Anyway, my apologies.
No, that's all right. So the FY '25, fiscal year '25 books have not been closed.
Correct.
All right. All righty. At this point, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
I move that we adjourn.
Is there a second?
Second.
All right, so we have a motion to adjourn made by Marcia, seconded by Derek. It is 7:14. We will do this as a roll call vote. Marcia?
Aye.
Vicky?
Aye.
Derek?
Aye.
David?
Aye.
And I'm an aye. The meeting is adjourned at 7:15 PM on a 5-0 vote. Thank you, everybody.